or at the other ID skate prior to the season ending, and it's like
crazy. Well, I
I
know
mean,
they're gonna have ID things here, but like in May and June, not
yeah,
not during the playoffs. That'd be really
during like you're imagine you invite like 6 kids that you're trying to get to replace the 6 kids you don't want, and it's during your playoff run. I'm like, you wonder why these parents lose their minds, you know?
yeah. Jeez.
It's but that's good. I'm glad you're still kicking around. That's good.
Yeah, we had a shootout, and all three of mine scored. And
Yeah.
my goalie stopped their first shooter, so they didn't even get to shoot three.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay.
And they played their worst game of the year and won.
But what was it, Tom? You 3 in a row shot, and then they had to shoot 3 in a row.
No, but
Once the one kid
no,
got,
they
yeah,
shot second.
yeah,
They shot second, so the goalie stopped their first one.
yeah.
And then once my third player scored, they couldn't score three.
Yeah.
So they didn't shoot.
Got it. Did you
Yeah.
see the text I sent you on Brent, Dodginghorse, on the his pit? He had that great Calgary Flames get up going.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, he lives on the edge of town.
Periods of the Hockey Canada, of that hockey game, he did quite a pregame ceremony, and
Well, it was a great ceremony.
and they talked to him between periods, really expressed himself well. I've been talking with him and Jordan on the phone quite a bit, and he's really into the inclusion thing, and he's got a big business going trying to expand that, and he's got well connected with his reputation, having played minor pro and played in Calgary with the major junior team.
Yeah.
So he's one of those guys who's in the right place at the right time. And
Yeah.
I shared a link on the chat for all of you. Jordan sent it to me last night, and it's a link about the Greater Toronto Hockey League, which is minor hockey.
Semi-minor hockey.
Yeah, and they're selling teams. Parents or wealthy investors who might be parents are buying teams, and we're talking $3 million. And when you read the article, it sort of talks about the lack of transparency and the way they operate. But Mike, as you know, it's the same as what you encounter. I'm not sure that the finances are as big an issue there, but I'm sure they still affect things in your minor hockey. But they're talking about coaches that are paid quite a bit of money, and the fact that people are buying teams so they can guarantee ice time. And Matt Dunbar and a number of other NHL players have invested in those teams, trying to maintain a sense of inclusion in their programs. But it's an article worth reading down the road, because I don't think it's any different than what you're facing in minor hockey, Mike. Is the people are just trying to look after their own interests in the best way they know how, and they just keep banging their heads. But I don't know what to say.
It's interesting only because like the way the GTHL is formatted, and you have like a governing body, and you have to, I'm sure you have to buy into, some of the issues are you have to actually probably buy into having a franchise in the GTHL. So there's already inherently, an ROI in there that they're building in. It's not like you just say, my team wants to go in the GTHL. You have to buy in, right? And that's it. So I don't really, it's funny. I've changed my tune on this, I guess, but I've never begrudged a parent that has money that, the whole thing about giving their own kid an opportunity. I've always looked at it as, well, if I could get that person, I'll give you an actual real life example. So when I had gotten done coaching a little bit college hockey, I came back and I started a program called the Snapple Express, which was down here at the time. It was in the like the mid 90s, and it basically was the Little Caesars, kind of level. If you've heard of Little Caesars or all these like the Mission, Chicago Mission, things like that. So one Nelson Peltz, who was the I had approached him. He had 2 kids at that age group, like an 8-year-old and a 11-year-old, and I said, hey, what would you think about sponsoring? And he owned Snapple. He owned Snapple, and he owned Tiffany's. He owns Arby's. He owns a big. I said, well, what do you think about, helping me start a program? And he said, yeah, well, what is it going to cost me? I gave him the figure and told him, oh, you'd be our main sponsor. And he said, well, I don't want any other people involved. They're just going to buy it. And so he purchased the whole thing, right, and made the financial investment. At the time, his oldest wouldn't have made one of the top teams, and if it was a clear-cut tryout. But obviously, we put the kid on the team. And my argument was, well, by him doing that, it benefited 120 other kids that were all in our program, all because he was very, he wanted to make sure his kid was in the right environment. So I did, I always, I think it's circumstance to circumstance. What you're saying, I think in the GTHL side, is they're actually selling and buying organizations like on a daily basis to strategically move tons of players in to dominate in that particular division. And that's the way we're structured down here. You could just start another team. You could start another program and you have a team. I mean, you just say, okay, all my kids are going here, and then you go play the games.
Mike, I put my hand up because I thought of exactly what you said. Father purchases team, kid makes the team. I have no issues with that. It's how the bench is managed when he makes the team. Does he get to play all roles? Do all players play all roles the first half and earn roles the second half? And I believe that happen in minor hockey. They don't. We're not even talking investment, spring, you name it. In minor hockey, they don't allow them to play and develop and earn their roles. And that's if that parent and that family and that team was operated in an earn your role philosophy versus, well, his kid's going to get more ice time than others, then I think we have a problem. And I think the concern with Matt Dunda and some of the ethnicity of the issues in the Greater Toronto League are just kids being able to afford an opportunity to play at that highest level. And there's going to be a little bit of investigation going on with it, but Jordan opened the can of worms, and I thought I would bring it up. So,
unfortunately, right, kids don't play, whether a parent owns the team or not. So it's like, well, I'd rather have the parent investing and saying, hey, listen, your son's going to get a chance to play, and hopefully it's going to be it's funny, you're the Tim, the whole ethical coaching thing came up in a podcast I was on last night with a couple of pretty big hockey guys down here in the U.S. And we were laughing how that's what's needed, right, the most in our sport and above everything else. And but this falls in line with that. Like, okay, who's the ethical director of the GTHL, and who's overseeing these transactions, and who's overseeing whether or not it's affecting the play in each organization or not? And then when you're buying an organization and you're representing a GTHL franchise, are you doing it in a way that is benefiting the sport? And I'd probably lean on the fact that you're not, but that's just a byproduct of the fact that that's how they're structured. I'm gonna go off camera for a second here. I just gotta if I don't get this email out, I'm not gonna be able to be on these calls anymore. I'll be right back.
Yeah, I just gotta go grab something myself.
We still on?
We are, Wally. I'm just catching up on this article you referenced.
Okay. I just got a call from Peter Smith, and he had talked about the agents, and he wanted me to edit out that portion of the talk because it sort of would incriminate himself and the owners and might affect the relationship. And so I've got to edit that part out. But have you had a peek at the article, Rick? Or
Well, just very briefly, I'm just on the second part of it. I printed it out because that's the way I like to read things, but
yeah,
it's I hadn't heard of it before, so I'm curious to see what it's all about. It really doesn't sound like a healthy situation in my opinion, but I don't have all of the facts yet, so.
well, it sounds, it's a pretty recent article, but I don't think it's anything new. I mean, this has been going on. I know in Ontario, the elitism of their GTHL it's the elite of the elite, and I'm sure this kind of thing is not just something new. My concern, Rick, was the flagrant shortening of the bench, which I knew the past 20 years. I actually got to speak to minor hockey leaders in Toronto about that issue, and the idea of playing everybody in the first half of the season and earning their roles appropriately was laughed at. So that was my biggest concern. Doesn't matter what's happening down there. You've coached over the years, Rick, and I'm curious about, did you from the get-go of tryouts, how soon did you establish who the players were that were going to play the special team situations and those that weren't? In other words, do you start picking a team and you know who your first, second, third, fourth lines are?
Not when I start picking the team, no. I generally work on the philosophy that you're speaking of, Wally, where up till Christmas time, everybody gets to play in all situations, and you earn the right based on your performance as to how that's going to play out in the latter half of the season. For instance, when I was doing midget AAA in the AMHL, the max tournament was the turning point. Everybody would play in all situations and scenarios up until the max, and then we would start delegating based on merit up to that point in the season, which didn't mean that you were excluded after that part, but once that regime got itself installed, you could play your way back on, but you needed to start performing. And sometimes that's what it took to get some players to realize that if they want something, the carrot is there, but they're going to have to earn it. And I have no issue with that as a general philosophy. I think part of the training that we're doing is having you to put your best foot forward to get the best result for yourself and your group.
When you were doing that, did you encounter any disagreement from the parent group or administrators that wanted you to create the identity sooner than later?
Occasionally.
Okay.
And we just dealt with them on a one-on-one basis.
Yeah.
When they came up, we explained where we're going with it and moved on.
Okay, I think
I have noticed in the past where I've been challenged on putting kids back into situations at that stage where someone would come to me and say, we've already learned that he's not capable. And my response was, well, we've been working with him on it, and we need to find out what he's learned, how he's developed. Is he getting the message or not? So you get the pushback on both sides in some cases.
Rick, how many kids did you find rose to the occasion and earn more special team situations?
I really don't know how to quantify that, Wally. It's not a thought line that I've actually entertained.
Yeah.
I would say that based on the performance of teams that I've coached in that realm, where we're always stronger at the back half of the season, that it had a very positive impact, meaning that our depth was greater than some teams, and we were able to call on more people in game situations than other teams might be.
Well, I think what you're saying is the same thing as Kerry Bracco. He managed the bench so everybody felt valued. Those that weren't playing on special teams to the same degree, might have been killing penalties, probably were, but 4 lines were 4 lines and they all got to play and they felt valued. I think that's just the essence of having this conversation. If you don't operate that way, then you have sort of an elitist, specialist, special treatment. You don't have a team philosophy and concept. And what you do and have done for years, and Kerry has always done, is manage to pick teams and let the chips fall where they may as they evolve in the first half. And the management of that bench relative to how they earn their ice time relative to the roles they played, it's paramount in developing the life skills that you need to play a sport. So you know that, I know that, Kerry, we all know that, but it still appears to be the bottom line of the problem that faces minor hockey. And that's really the biggest thing that concerns me the most.
Well, I think overall, any pushback you get from parents of a negative variety is usually around one of two things. One is ice time in general,
Yeah.
and the other is opportunities to play in differing in all situations.
Yeah.
One other aspect of the earlier conversation, Wally, is that in the latter half of the season, game situation, competitive situation in the moment also dictated. If you were needing a goal, and the game situation dictated it was all on the line, then obviously you go with your stronger group at that phase. And that was, in my case, it was always explained to the kids that this was what's likely to happen. Here's why it's going to happen. And we had that conversation before it was just dropped on everybody. Conversely, if the game situation was well in hand, ideal opportunity to put people that you wouldn't normally do into those situations, give them the experience, give them the opportunity to show that they've picked something up along the way and that they're more accomplished than what they started out as.
Yeah. No, it sounds like common sense, but common sense isn't common. How do you?
That right?
I don't know, Rick. You've been around a long time, but why?
Why?
Yeah.
I enjoy doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Hockey is, golf has become my old guy passion, but hockey's still there and was my focus athletics wise all the way through. And I enjoy seeing the progress of the kids. And I call them kids because that's what they are.
Yeah. Well, why are we in the minority?
Good question.
Tom, why are we in the minority? Because you operate your bench. There's nobody who could get upset with their kid. It's ice time and roles they might play, because right now at your level, it's close to rolling it.
Well, don't say that. We got one of the mothers talking last game because her daughter was spending so much time filling for the D who jumped up the ice. And she wanted the D to make sure they got back right away so her daughter can get onto offense. And her daughter was having looked like she's exhausted, eh?
Yeah.
Well, she wasn't involved in the play. A lot of times she's our best player,
Yeah.
but she wasn't even involved in the play. So of course she was the last forward up the ice all the time, and that's why she was covering. But
Yeah.
she thought it was all because of that situation, eh? So you never make everybody happy. But yeah, we like, I don't know, especially at this age. I don't know why you'd go to practice if you hardly ever get to play. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think I'd go to practice if I was going to be sitting out all the time. You know, and so my philosophy is that, and then the last part of the game, you put on your best players to hang on. We haven't even done that much this year, but when I coach higher levels, you put on the players, but it's game to game, because it's not always the same player who's gonna get it done, right? Some days you're flat and some days you're flying, and so you got to have a sense when you're coaching who's going, who's not going, and this kind of stuff. So it's a little bit of an art to it, but I just have I just can't fathom why you would ever even bother going to practice or all this if you're just going to sit around all the time, and just watch your teammates play. That's my opinion.
Yeah. Mike?
But I always play because I love to play, not love to watch other people play. So.
It just literally just had the conversation back and forth with a coach down in Florida who is like just a young guy, new coach, real good coach actually, but just, trying to get a different perspective. Like, how do I approach, I got two goalies, one stronger than the other. How do I approach them both? And I'm like, well, number one is the kid on your team? Okay, you picked them on your team. Then it's your job to play them. Like, you have to find a way to play them. And these are 13 and 14-year-olds and 12-year-olds and 10-year-olds. I said, so, and then really, to Tom's point, who can go to practice? Like, think about a goalie who knows they're never going to play. They're the backup goalie. Like, that's one of the thing that hurts me the most is when I hear youth coaches talk about their starter and their backup, and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. This is where you have an obligation and a duty, and it's your job to find ways to incorporate those kids into the team concept. Make sure that goalie feels that every day he shows up, he's competing and getting a chance, and then you have to give them a chance. Because I think what I see the most happen in my area here is all of a sudden that quote unquote starter goalie gets hurt, 3 weeks left in the season. And now you're going to tell the other kid how much you love him and how much you need him and how much you appreciate him. And he's like, what are you talking about? You never even let me play, so.
Speaking of the point, Mike, in the first time I went to the Nationals with the University of Calgary, the pregame skate, and we'd had this one guy played since about mid-November, and the guy caught an edge, slammed into him, ripped his knee up, and we're playing in the National first game, Final Four that night, and it was telecast on whatever, and the one guy dressed, but he didn't take any warm-up in there. Speculating maybe he went out partying the night before or something like that. This guy's playing. And we were leading that game by 2 goals with 2 minutes left, and we lost in overtime. But you never know. It might be a good idea to let everybody get in the net for a little while. Because he'd sit for 4 months.
And just for you, like again, to your point, like I don't know, if I could go to practice. I see it in high school here all the time. Like, I don't know if I could be on a team when you're really not on the team.
Yeah.
You just bought a jersey and you paid for you paid for the ice, but you're not on the team. And I think that's the whole point about sports and especially youth sports. I'm not talking about like, when you're getting paid and you have to play to win. I'm talking about you make a team, you are on the team. That's it. Like, just, you got to play. Now, again, I wish I had the text. I'd share it with you guys. but the way I worded it, the coach, I think a light bulb went off, because I said it's not about being fair. Like, it doesn't have to be equal. It doesn't have to be this goalie plays 60 minutes and this goalie plays 60 minutes. They both have to have the opportunity to play and feel they're always competing to play. You have to put them in situations to play. But at the end of the day, if the other kid's just working harder and showing up and doing the things they're supposed to do, they're going to play more. Like, we want that. Like, we want that competition. But a kid that's not playing just because you don't think they're as good, but they're working just as hard as everyone else, you have to find a way to get them to be in those situations. Forward, goalie, D. And it's so frustrating to see. I saw my own kid play too much this year. I'm like, you've got to play. You're playing 4D. You got to play 6. You got 2 other kids on the bench. Play the other kids. Like, get them on the ice. This kid's exhausted. He looks terrible out there in the third period because he just, he's got like that 28 minutes of ice time. I'm like, play the other kids. And Tom, I think, it is an art. It is a understanding, like, face off in their zone. Look at the team. Look at the group that's on the ice. This is my opportunity to get this kid in the game. Like, and I just don't think I don't think a lot of coaches even are in the game. I don't think they're thinking about that. They're not thinking about. They're thinking about, how do I keep this kid from ever hurting me, instead of, wow, how do I put this kid in the place to have success?
Yeah. Well, exactly.
I know.
That's the problem with this phone call. You guys know this stuff. You're gonna talk to the 7,000.
I think
that aren't on the call.
The issue, to me, there's sort of like 2 phases. You pick a team. If you pick a number 1 goalie and a backup, when you pick, you do have a first choice and a second choice. You've created a mindset. And over the season, that alternating goalies, I believe, is the thing to do in the first half, at least. But I'm going to defer to Rick here, but I just want to mention on the idea of ice time, a AAA playoff game, Carey's son is playing. They get into the overtime. It went to 2 overtime periods. And each team shortened their benches in overtime. And in the third period, and they were exhausted. In the second overtime period, it was like every second shift. And had they used their so-called third and fourth lines at the right time, as opposed to every second shift with the best, fortunately, both teams did it. So they were equally exhausted.
Yeah.
And they gave up breakaways. They had breakdowns that would be from fatigue. And one of the teams won. But I don't believe that any team won. They got the victory, but to manage that bench so you get the most out of everybody and value those guys going into overtime, it's the first round of the playoffs. You're going to need them. So when you say I call it coaching with the gut, Tom, that's exactly what I'm talking about here. On the bench, coach with your gut. Understand the biomechanics, the energy systems, and the psyche of every player. The best team wins. So, Rick, I wanted to ask you, Rick, in all of your experience, and we could talk about goalies. 1-2, 1-1, alternating, to what degree, and where did you end up going when at the most competitive, important times near the end of the year, or the Max tournament, for instance?
Well, when you reference the Max, there was one instance where we had two very qualified goaltenders, but one was recognized as being stronger than the other and did actually get drafted into Major Junior. But when we hit the max tournament, we started a cycle. It was the so-called second goaltender's turn to play, and he started the tournament for us. And as it turned out, we went to the final, and it turned out to be his turn to play again. And he played. And we lost that final by a goal. We didn't score any. And I'm still to this day not sure how it could have turned out any differently with the other goaltender.
Yeah.
And yet I took some criticism for that. Understandably, I guess, in most of our opinions, you're going to get that pushback when things don't turn out well. But backtracking a little bit here, fellas, I've actually had parents come to me, even though I discourage it in between periods, or lean over the glass and say, "Don't play my kid in the third period. She's not good enough. They're going to hurt you." And I just look back and say, "I'll make that call."
Yeah.
Goes both ways, not very often in the negative side, but you have parents and others that are embarrassed by the performance of their kids and don't really want to have to witness it any further.
Well, I wasn't so embarrassed about my kid, but I never went to the coach, but I'm in the stands going, man, would he be so much better in the last, because he's going to play in the last 2 minutes of the game. I know that. So I'm like, man, would he be so much better in the last 2 minutes if he had rested more in the second period, or if the other kid in the first period gave him a little breather, or, and I think that's that's why the emotions of the game it's so interesting to watch people, like when a goal gets given up or when you score a goal, how that emotional swing of like, okay, that's the game. Like, well, it's not the game. We still have 58 more minutes to play. And I think that's where, a coach can influence that bench so much by having the ability to say, okay, you're up, let's go. And, I've seen that, I've done that. It's countless how many times I knew we were going to get to our second string goalie. We had already established well ahead of time that player was going to play. The kids knew it. The other goalie knew it. The other goalie parents knew it. And maybe it was an issue like at the bar that night, but it wasn't an issue with the team on the bench. It was, hey, we believe in this guy too. And we're actually going to maybe play a little harder because we understand that it's up against him a little bit more. But that's the great part about coaching.
Yeah. I've got two stories, Tom. One related to Wes's team, and they lost out in the last game, but it was, you lose two, you're out kind of thing, as everybody knows in the playoff structure and that level of hockey. And Wes called me, and we had a good conversation about the season and how the game went and etc. But then near the end of the conversation, he says, "Molly, I have to admit, I couldn't sleep last night because near the end of the game, might have been 4 minutes left, one of the assistant coaches came up and said, do you still want me to roll the lines?" And he said, you know what, he knows who the better players were. And the assistant coach pressured him. And it's one of those things, you're still in the cities. And he did it, shortened the bench. And here he was. It bothered him. He couldn't sleep at night. And they lost the game. And I explained to him why he did the right thing. And it's called, you want a win-win coach. If you have a philosophy, live by the philosophy, and in that case, you lost the game and you lost the spirit of the kids. Now the season's over, but it still isn't when you've coached all year this particular way. So that's the point I'm making. It's win-win coaching is leave them out there, let them try to get the result. And if you don't, you don't. You've lived by your philosophy. Know your philosophy of development, not outcome coaching. Now, my other story is Pee Wee boys hockey. Mike Petros, who owns the restaurant in town, his dad started. He's coaching Pee Wee hockey, and he rolls them. And they're in overtime where it's, I think, 3-on-3 or something. And it's the absolute worst defenseman's shift. And he's out there on the ice already lined up. And the two coaches came over and spoke in his ear and said, God, we're going to get scored on. You can't leave him out there. And so he called the kid over. And I might get the name wrong. He says, Johnny, come over here. And the kid came over with a big smile on his face, said, yeah, what, coach? Yeah. Just go out there and give her your best. And he stayed out, and they lost. But he lived by his philosophy. He can look in the mirror, and that's his philosophy. So whatever you do, if you can transmit belief by managing that all year, the idea is to transmit belief and don't lose the spirit of your team. And that's the line between being able to shorten the bench, make the right decision, and communicate in a way that you care about everybody. And being able to do that, that's a fine line in coaching. And I don't know if any of you have had to deal with that moment. I know I did my first year coaching Bantam. And I still remember when I went with the same goalie in back-to-back games, and we won because of it. But I know the look on the other goalie's face, and I still remember it today. It was the wrong thing to do. As egotistical as the championship was, I didn't transmit belief. So that was one of those lessons. And I'm not sorry I did it. I just wish I had managed it during the season, so I could live with it better, and so could the kid and the parents. But anything to add on that, Rick? That story or the discussion?
I think, Wally, if we coach enough, which we all have, you're going to encounter all of these situations. That is your training ground. That, you have your philosophy, but you have to deal with day-to-day situations, game-to-game situations, shift-to-shift situations sometimes where it's called into question which way are you going to go. And quite frankly, in some occasions, there's a good reason to go either way. You hope to be right more often than you're wrong, but you're trying to please a very diverse and wide gamut of opinion and emotions on your team, on your parent group, and sometimes casual observers. I've been challenged from time to time over the years by people that didn't have anybody in the game. They just watched the game and didn't like the way certain things went. Didn't like the way I didn't challenge a referee on a situation. Stuff that's none of their business, but they feel they have to say something.
Well,
we talk about the art of coaching.
Yeah.
And one of the most criticized things is art. What is art? Well, art for you is not necessarily art for me. And coaching is in a lot of ways no different than a painting or a sculpture or some things they call art that I can't figure out what category to put it in.
Yeah. Art might be that gray area of decision making.
Hugely gray. More colorful the gray, the more it seems to be art.
Yeah. And, and I don't know if this falls under art, but when you've had success and you're sort of going with your gut, and I call it, I don't know if it's art, but it's just you get a feeling for a situation. And I have so many situations, and one of them was Junior A hockey, Calgary Canucks, 6th game of a playoff, which we had to win to go to the 7th. And I went to 5D, maybe in the second period, and we won the game. And I don't know why I went to 5D. It's just that they got in a rhythm. And the D that I didn't play, I can't say why I didn't. It's the way I did. But when we won the game and I went in the dressing room, I saw the look on the face of the defenseman who didn't play. And I brought him into the room. I had the trainer bring him in. And I tried to explain to him. I told him, I said, look, I thought we had to go down to 5. And we did, and we got in a rhythm. And it paid off. And I know how you feel, but I promise you, you're going to play the next game. But these situations come up where you do it. And we did win the next game. He did get to play a regular shift, and he came up and he appreciated being talked to. Like right after I had the conversation, it was a relief. It wasn't like you left him out in left field and put up with it, kid, toughen up, suck it up. This is Junior A hockey. You should be able to do it. No, it was realizing you're human. You want to play. Everybody wants to play. And if there's a reason behind why you didn't, please try to help them understand it. And I did that. And I thought that was one of my better coaching moments in terms of achieving that. So go ahead, Rick.
Well, just on that theme, Wally, when I did pull a player or take some ice time away later in a game, well, in some cases it might have been discipline related. In other cases, it was just on the competitive situation of the moment. I took up a station in the hallway on the way out immediately after the game. And I did not miss that player on the way out so we could have a conversation.
No.
He didn't have to always buy into what I was trying to explain to him. No. And just as background, this was already a subject of discussion from day one, that this could happen, might happen. You could be involved or you could be not included in it, but we would have those situations where that would come up, albeit later in the season in the ultra competitive side. But I didn't let them get out of the arena without having had that conversation. And I'd have to say, for the most part, that was a very effective process. You can't hide from the situation. You can't try to mask it and pretend it didn't happen or that it doesn't hurt someone's feelings. And quite frankly, as a player, I've been there. I've been the star player on the team, and I've been the guy that didn't even play for a full playoff game until the overtime, and I jumped on just so I could get some ice time. I took it upon myself to be first over the boards. So I know how it feels. I've been on both sides of it, so there's a lot of empathy there. But I think that the big thing is you go into the season, you explain your philosophy to your player group, to your parent group. This is how I function, and here's why I function that way. So let's have the conversation now. And Wally goes back to my code of conduct discussion. It's all part and parcel. And when it happens, I always get to refer back to that. And I try not to let it happen too frequently, but you're serving both masters here. And sometimes the team expects you to do things on the bench to make sure that the outcome is good. And you live and die, you live with all of those decisions, the good ones and there'll be some bad ones. I had another max situation where we qualified on the last day for the playoff round, for the medal round, And nobody left that arena at Max Bell. I took over the training room down there, and we had one-on-one meetings with the coaching staff and each player. It went on for about an hour and a half after the game. We just went over all the things we talked about, all the things we'd been through as a group, one-on-one with each player, and we won that tournament. And it came out that we had done that, and in the morning of January 2nd, I got a call from a parent wondering why I was picking on his kid. There was no names mentioned, but they implied certain things from what information they were able to garner to say, I've got something to complain about here, and I'm damn well going to complain. And there was no merit to his complaint. I can say that with a straight face. But you just don't know what you're dealing with on the other side. They don't have all the facts, but they have their own assumptions. Those become facts, and then you deal with that situation. But I've always tried to be very upfront with my players and their parent group. This is the way we do things. This is why we do things. And until I learn a better way, this is how we're going to do things. And I think that's good management in itself.
I shared a short talk, maybe two or 3 minutes, by Simon Sinek on parenting and leadership. And that particular talk is, as a coach, you're a parent. And Peter Whitney and I talked last week because he's pursuing the mission statement exercise. And when I sent this Simon Sinek short talk out, he said he tells his captains their role is like a parent on the team. And I never thought of that before. I thought of the role as a coach, Rick. You're a parent of the parents of the kids on this team. So everything you're doing in the interest of their child is objective, proper, unemotional, and whereas parents are caught up with the investment of their blood's thicker than water kind of thing, and they don't see things objectively. They don't let their kids deal with adversity and learn from mistakes. And I think that's what sport teaches you. But unfortunately, but maybe fortunately, there are enough good coaches around that can deal with that in a point where parents will appreciate it in time. But too much of the opposite is going on. Coaches are being turned over incredibly often. It's almost like a Ferris wheel. Good coaches are being cycled and recycled, and maybe for the right reason, because they don't understand the art of coaching. They have the X's and O's down, but they don't have the behavioral ramifications down of coaching. What are you teaching them? And basically, you're teaching trust and respect and effort. And being able to deliver on that consistently, it's something that I don't know how many years I've been preaching it, but it's been almost too many. But we'll just keep on trying to push for things the right way. Anybody else got anything to add? Tom, I think you must be still editing video of your team's games.
No, I sit here at the computer and I listen and I update my site every morning with a few things. The one thing that for me is today I'm going to reserve my flight and my son's flight to Riga, Latvia to watch the World Championships. Canada plays there.
Okay.
So I want to make sure one of my friends in Salzburg, he's from Toronto, but he moved to Salzburg and he's lived there for 20 years now or something. Yeah. He's going to come there too. And the other half is playing in Tampere, and there's a coaching conference, but it's pretty expensive, and Finland's really expensive. And I've been there a dozen times, and I've never been to Riga, and it's supposed to be a really neat place according to some of the guys that I know. So I'm gonna go there and try to get one last World Championship in. Well, I still have a little money left over from coaching. Not much. It's gonna take it all of it, but
Are you going alone?
no, Jim is gonna go.
Okay,
Gary John might come.
yeah,
This Dave Wiggins, he's gonna meet me there.
okay,
I've already got a B&B reserved. It sleeps 3, and it's not very expensive, only about $100 a night for the whole thing. So the cost is a lot better, but I love going to those games overseas that people are chanting, and the Latvian fans are absolutely nuts. They're the most rabid fans I've ever seen in my life. So it should be a neat experience.
is it all a pool?
Well, it's the pool Canada's in, whatever that is.
Okay,
If I went to Finland, Canada wouldn't play there till the playoff,
yeah,
final semis and all that stuff. And I'm not really interested in watching the other teams play that much.
yeah,
And the coaching conference, yeah. For the level I'm coaching now, I kind of have more than I need already, so I don't really need to go to it. And I can also just watch it online if I want to listen to the speakers down the road. But it should be good.
well, I've never been to one of those. I don't know if my health would take it, but Rick, it's quite an experience to. Tom, how many worlds have you been to and gone to conferences like that? Can you count them?
I've been to about 6, I think. In Finland and Vienna and so Denmark, whatever that city's called, Copenhagen, Prague, Quebec City, and some other ones that I can't remember.
Tom, I got
Two in,
you.
I spoke at one with Johanny and Yursinov.
Yeah. You've been probably more than any Canadian coach exposed to European hockey in the world. And in fact, you've sort of been on the outside looking in at Canadian hockey because you were over there experiencing things that we never realized were being done better.
Well,
So
I got frustrated. I got really frustrated with our skill level really dropped. The year that Danny Heatley played for Canada under 20s,
yeah,
he was the only guy who could take a pass. Like, it was awful. He'd pass the puck break, wouldn't get it back. Guys are stick handling around aimlessly, almost like midget AAA hockey. And our skill level had dropped so badly. Like, now it's amazing, but at that time, that's in the late 90s. And then I saw what the different stuff they did in Europe, and then hooking up with like George brought all those guys at UFC, all those Swedish and all that. And when I met with Johanny and he brought me over there, I really saw what they do. Then I was lucky enough to, I think it was 3 times I was a head coach of the Finnish national hockey school in the summers and in Viramäki. So I'd have NHL guys as my assistants and a lot of stars from Finland. So, so I got a really good look at the difference. Like I remember talking about the 1-3-1 power play that everybody uses now. It started off Jusso's practice. He was coaching TPS and Hannaverta and the Koivus and all that kind of stuff come from there. And their power play wasn't working. And I think it was Hannaverta went up and says, Jusso, our power play sucks. He says, we got to do something. He says, well, you guys go figure something out. So I'm sure some of them must have played basketball. And they implemented this 1-3-1 power play that everybody uses now. And for a while there, Finland was the only one doing it at the World Championships. And all of the teams in the World Championships were doing it, but NHL wasn't. And I remember talking to the Mount Royal men's coach. I was doing the women then, and their power play was struggling. And I said, there's this power play, the 1-3-1. You got 4 natural triangles. It's a great. He says, Tom, look, you coach girls hockey. This is way too fast for that stuff. So he just blew me off, and now everybody uses it. And that's how things come about. They start somewhere and they grow. But I wrote about it in our second manual, just not very much about it. But no one was using that at that time. But I saw that, like in Salzburg, the way they practice, and just how they focus on the skills. It just was so much better, and like we've really progressed that way. Like the kids now are so skilled, it's unbelievable. So there's always different things going on in different places.
Tom, how much time at a practice, seasonal practice, do you feel should be spent on skills?
Well, it depends. Like in coaching college, you practice 4 times a week. I'd rotate through the 4 game playing roles. Individual offensive and individual defensive, then team offense and team defense. In this team I have now, we always start off with skills, right? And then I kind of rotate. Like last practice, we were focused on individual offensive and team offensive skills. And tomorrow night, it'll be the warm up, but more focused. What the teaching point, what we'll be talking about to the kids is the defensive stuff. And even using some of the same drills, but the focus of coaching will be on the defensive stuff. So that all depends on how many practices you get.
Yeah.
And whether they're half ice or full ice. It was kind of like when Wes just said you can have the full ice the next 2 practices. We were supposed to be 2 shared practices this week.
Yeah.
And their goalie comes out, so that allows us to do lots of stuff. But you're always subject to the level of the players, right?
Yeah.
How many practices you have, how much ice you have. How good are your assistant coaches? Everything's variable. Is that Brent there? How are you doing?
Brent, Tom was at the hockey game and impressed with the ceremony.
I thought that was a ceremony.
Good morning, fellas. The
Morning.
wise men, the guys I look up to. Good morning. I fed my horses this morning. It was pretty cold. Little ponies were chilly this morning. But yeah, the ceremony, well, I guess it was a celebration. It wasn't a ceremony. It was a celebration. It was long overdue. I'm glad the Flames reached out to me January 16th, and that was the end result, what you saw on Hockey Night in Canada. So I thought it went very well.
So it was really good. It was really well done. I was at that game, and I thought it was just really well done.
Yeah, the components, I think, just to give you a little, I could talk hours about it, but the background on it, the details, there's a whole story to the territories and to the traditional lands. And the cool part is, I talked a little bit about it, is the traditional games. Traditional games have been happening for thousands of years in our communities, in our Indigenous communities. And what they do is bring people together. They gather, they pay respect, they show their culture, they show their pride. In our culture, they had traditional horse games, they had traditional hand games, they had traditional games to where people gathered and they'd settle disputes or settle differences. And this has been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years. So the way I see it, that was like a more traditional game that brought everybody together, because everybody under one dome, the Saddle Dome Hockey Night in Canada, is different cultures.
Brent, I really like what you just said about tradition, games, and you mentioned some of the games are played where they're settling differences and they're pretty aggressive, but they're done in a way that breeds respect in the end. And I think rugby is one of those sports where very few sports do you try to maim each other, but the idea of what comes out of that. Now, I've got a story that I want to share with you, Brent, and I don't know if you're aware of it, but the 1960 Olympics in Mexico, there was a Team Canada had a sports psychologist that they were talking about perspective and refocusing under stress. And they used a story of an African village and a game they played in the center of the village, which was on a wide open space where the males on each side of the village would play a game of murder ball and literally maim each other. It was physicality like you couldn't believe. But at the end of the game, and I always related this to rugby, they went to the tallest tree in the village, and the captains put their arms on the trunk as high as they could. All the players put their hands on one another's shoulder, and they imagined the negative emotions and feelings going up through the trunk, through the branches. And the cue word that the Canadian Olympic team that year had for refocusing was tree it. So when you got uptight, you got wound up, you got upset in game situations, that story connected. And I thought of it immediately when you said the different kinds of games. Hockey's just another game. There's all kinds of North American sports, but the idea of why you play the game and what you come out of it for, and right now your ability to have a celebration and appreciate that. I don't care if it's the Flames game. They're striving to be better than the other side, but not lose sight of the big picture.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Wally. I was just amazed by the way everybody came together, and it was really emotional because as a BIPOC person of color, minority to Canada, and being traditionally the first people here in Canada, it was important to share our story in a graceful, kind, respectful way to show the strength and resilience of our people, but also to learn. I think I was really blessed to travel in a traditional game that I traveled to about 3 weeks ago to a month ago was in just outside of Mexico, on the other side of Phoenix, a place called Sells, Arizona, Odana Autumn Nation. And when I was there for their celebrations, they had a game that was almost identical to hockey. They were dressed in their traditional regalia, their buns. At that time, the females were all playing. They had wood sticks. They looked like mesquite sticks. They're lawn hockey sticks, and they were curved. They had traditional protocols there, elders, and only the women were allowed on it was like an outdoor arena, like an outdoor football field. And the game was called Taka, but that brought the whole community together. And the oldest person the oldest elder was the ref, and they dropped the puck. The puck was made out of mesquite and tied with leather. And Thaka was a game that brought people together, inspired people, and taught values. And that game's been happening for thousands of years. And I swear to God, it looked just like hockey. And also, the Dene from up north in Yukon, they called me and heard what I was doing. And they have a similar game to hockey in Delaney, but they had moccasins, and they had leather moccasins, and they put blades on they had rawhide and blades. So this is going back hundreds of years. We're not claiming that hockey come from us. I'm not claiming that. All I'm saying is traditional games brought people together to celebrate sport, to celebrate cultures.
Your mic, Wally.
Wally, your mic's off.
Is that the first time you've heard of and seen that game?
That's the first time I've ever watched Thaka. Thaka is from Odana Otham, which is the second biggest First Nation in the U.S. They have Navajo Nation is the biggest First Nation, and then Odana Otham is the second biggest. In fact, that game is so ingrained into their culture. The women are so good when other nations ask them, challenge them to play. They said, "Oh, you guys aren't that good. We'll send our women's team to beat your men's team." That's how good they are.
Yeah.
I'll send you guys pictures and videos of it. It's truly amazing to see the similarities and the way they get behind their game. And like I said, that game's been around hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Brent, do you have a video of the celebration?
Yeah, actually I do. I have they're on my socials on Facebook, DH Ranch, Instagram, and LinkedIn.
Is it possible you could share it with me so I can include it and share it out to our audience? Because
Yeah,
I'm going to edit this part of the talk out. I had a question about the celebration. One of the things that struck me was you had a number of, was it tribes represented there from Alberta?
yeah, they're referred to as tribes or nations. So, yeah, long before Canada was here, there's First Nations that were here that occupied lands, and we had the Blackfoot Confederacy, which consists of the Siksika, Kainai, and Pagani First Nations, and we also had the Stoney Nakoda, which is Good Stoney, Bearspaw, and Chiniki. Then we had Tsuut'ina Nation, where I come from. And then they also have recognized the Métis Nation of Region 3. So it was very important to show, not to showcase, but to pay respects to our culture. And I tell you, trying to bring that many people together, it took a committee and it took a working group. I will not take credit for all of it. It's the people that you bring in that work together. My job was just to help and assist and have oversight and build that partnership with the Flames. But I really, truly thankful to the working committee. It just goes to show we work together. If we listen to everybody's opinion and they all have a valued opinion, together everybody can achieve more. Because I've been a part of a lot of losing teams and I've been a part of a lot of winning teams. I think when we work together, we accomplish more.
Well, Brent, before you came on, I think a lot of the time was spent, and Rick in particular, talking about hockey and teams being more successful than others. And the idea of when you play a game, you have to earn a role but you also have to be respected as being a part of the team and feel a part of the team. And you use the acronym TEAM, together everyone achieves more. It's so true. Yet coaches in hockey seem to forget about that and focus on the outcome.
Yeah.
By shortening the bench, players being given roles that aren't earned, and a lot of players not getting ice time to develop and feeling less valuable to the team. So what you're saying about your celebration, it brought a lot of people together that I'm sure had differences historically over time, territorial, challenging differences.
Yeah.
Generations of differences. And to bring that group together today, at this time, for the purpose of where we are at as a society, is huge. I mean, it's the time now to really make games achieve the results we want with the perspective of why you play sports, why you play games.
Yeah,
Because it is bigger than the sport or the score clock. It impacts, your whole nation, all nations.
Yeah, not all nations, but like everybody in society as in general. They had two videos. One video was the intro video. They showed Flames highlights, but we really talked about the ambassador role models, or nowadays the kids call them influencers. But they had videos of Rocky Thompson. Man, that the way his fire and the way he plays the game. They had Chris Simon. They also had Theo Fleury scoring his goal, because these are Indigenous players that played for the Flames. Rene Bourque, Sandy McCarthy, Scrappin. I mean, my blood was absolutely boiling when I was watching this. And these are inspirational players as First Nation Indigenous players. And it was so good to see. Then there was a second component, which was Southern Alberta Treaty 7 Indigenous players that played either pro or major junior, and like the likes of Wasey Rabbit, drafted, played pro everywhere, and still a role model, coach in Saskatoon. Judd Blackwater is still currently playing pro. I think he's almost at 1,000 games in Europe. So many role models that are playing the game still that kind of go unnoticed. But it was important for us to show the kids and show the people that our people have strength and resilience, because I'm just going to segue it into probably the most controversial topic, which is the HDA. But I just chimed in on social media after reading the article. I do support the dream, and I do support the dream plan, but it carefully has to calculate how they do allyship and how they raise awareness. Because as a person of color, a minority, an Indigenous person, it's important for us to see these role models, to see other people succeed, because there's only 6 First Nation players in the NHL right now at the moment. 7 with Carey Price, but he's not active. So it's important that we learn and work together, because hockey is a beautiful game. It brings us all together.
Brent, when you decided to go the distance, becoming a hockey player, what advice would you give young people aspiring to do the same as you? What lessons did you learn moving forward? And what would you say to the public about that?
Well, as an Indigenous hockey player, you have to be able to chase your dreams and go as far as you can. But also at the same time, I had a lot of underlying issues that I never talked about for a long time. And I think if there's some unresolved trauma in your life, it's important to reach out and get some help and deal with it. And I think it's very important that we know the effects of substances, drugs, and alcohol, because I think that was one of the things that hindered my dreams and hindered my outcomes. But I want to be able to talk about it to educate people, because I'll credit hockey for where I am today in sports, but I also want to be able to talk about it openly, that anybody that has mental wellness issues or addiction issues or systematic racism issues, that we have to just learn how to talk about it openly so we can be better people in the end. What are the stats of a NHL player to be made out of Calgary? Is it 0.1? So at the end of the day, very few people, what is there, only 720 jobs in the NHL, if that? So it's very important that we just produce good human beings and good people in sports.
I'm just writing a few notes here. I think Rick, Tom, this group in particular, what Brent said, your job as a parent, as a coach, as a leader, whether you're a politician or a coach, and when you add it all up, it's produce good human beings. I like that, those 3 words. You know, I don't like getting into war and politics, but one of the mantras years ago of the Marines when they were first going to, I'm not sure where it was really to provide goodwill, support in areas that were trying to become more democratic. And the general had 2 words of advice to anybody, and they were do good. And I think it's almost like that's your mission statement. Whatever you do, wherever you go, however you treat people, and how we treat one another. I've always referred to that story coming from a leader of a military organization that is trying to right the ship in their mind, societally and worldwide, and do good is it's really a simple way of saying how can we be better by just trying to do good, you know.
Yeah, I had a very I guess a very good learning experience working with the Flames in this past little bit, but I was taught something very beneficial, and I had this feeling when I walked away from this meeting or this traditional ceremony. We had 7 elders of the Treaty 7 territory, consisting of the Blackfoot, Paganis, Siksika, Tsuut'ina, Chiniki, Goodstoney. So there's roughly 7 times 70 years of knowledge, maybe in some cases 80 average age. So there's over 500, 600 years of knowledge there, passed down knowledge for thousands of years. And when they prayed and when they talked about 3 subjects in their native tongue. They talked about strength, resilience, and horse culture. The horse culture, every single nation had their own interpretation of the horse culture and the strength of the horse. And our language is Iskle. The other nations have their own. But I walked out of there with thousands of years of stories and their knowledge. and I felt so like I was ready to go to battle. I wanted to strap on my skates and get on the ice, but that's how jacked up I was. But I think it's important that, as a group, that we define what are we playing for, what do we want to do, and that's why I always say strength and resilience, because when teams come together, somebody has to win, somebody has to lose, but if you're trying your hardest and you're working as a team, you'll be happy with yourself at the end of the day.
Now, you mentioned the elders and the prayers. Did each one say a prayer, or did somebody say a representative prayer?
Well, the way it worked out is the head man, chiefs of every nation, sent in a delegate, and a delegate had a representative of what they call a spiritual leader of every nation, and that's they're the wise man of each nation. So they have the traditional protocols, the stories, the prayers. So I guess just to elaborate a little bit about it, is they prayed in their native tongue, they prayed in their ways, and they just prayed for everybody to come together and everybody to have understanding. But at the end of the day, their interpretation is we move forward together, and that we're all brothers and sisters, and that they explained to me that the game is a powerful game because it brings people together, and it goes back to the original saying of the traditional games, that our people had traditional games that brought people together. So I can't wait to go on the next journey and really edit the videos and talk about it and educate people about it, because I think this is something that needs to be talked about in mainstream society.
Brent, I want to share a story playing with the national team. And I really, it's emotional for me because I'm a first generation Canadian. My father and family, my parents were born in the Ukraine, came over to escape the Stalin regime politically, to look for a better life in Canada. And we came to Canada, which is your land. And when I grew up in a small town in Saskatchewan, like you, it was a passion, a game you loved, that you played and strived for. When I made the national team, I remember my dad coming to a game. We played the Russians, and it was a game we won, the only one I think we had beaten them as a player, and that was the original Father Bauer national team. And prior to games, I wanted to share the prayer. I always say a prayer.
Yeah.
And over the years, starting at university, I actually wrote out a prayer which falls along the framework of the Lord's Prayer.
Yeah.
But it's dedicated to sport and the safety of the athletes, the good play of both teams,
Yes.
and to provide a show that everyone will appreciate and be proud of.
Yeah.
So it was respecting the good of the game, and it was in the form of a prayer where you would say amen. It was the same kind of languaging as the Lord's Prayer in it, but with that kind of languaging in it. So when you play a sport, most coaches get hung up winning. If you lose, parents get hung up, association gets hung up, it's ego driven. But that way, as a player for Father Bauer on the national team, he wanted to go to the Olympics. It was always the Olympics.
Yeah.
And the purpose of the Olympics, what did it symbolize? What did it represent? So I developed that particular prayer, which I think is in keeping with the strength and the resilience and the respect factor of both teams. And the famous basketball coach, I believe Phil Jackson, who said, your partner's in the dance. Your opponent is a partner in the dance. And I always tell coaches that your job and your players, your job is to make the other team better. And their job is to make you better. And that better has nothing to do with the score clock. There will be a result.
Yeah.
But the limits, the effort, the extent to which you compete and possibly even maim yourself, is what is the driving force behind it. And I believe that the most highly competitive athletes at the highest level, they have more respect for the purpose of the game than we do in minor hockey as kids grow up. We lose sight of the essence and purpose of playing a sport. Like you said, what are you playing for?
Yeah.
And the real reason is, I think it has to be clearly understood. What are you parenting your child to play for? What do you want to accomplish out of this experience? And I'm really glad you came on because it gave me a chance to reinforce the message that I've dedicated the rest of my life to. But amazing stories. And I really believe that the time is right now for sport to have a bigger impact, and the societal thing it's bigger than all of us.
Yeah. Well, I hope out of this conversation, what it's going to create is awareness, one thing, because I've had the opportunity to meet with traditional leaders. And a lot of our history isn't written down. It's passed on traditions, orally taught stories, games that are still happening within our nation. So I feel very blessed to be able to be a part of your conversations and listening to you guys and learning, but also very blessed to be able to learn from my people about the traditional games out there. So if any outcomes come out of this, it's that we're all going to work, learn, and move forward together, because there's many more traditional games in every culture, whether it's Team Korea just kind of reached out to the first our sportsplex, and there's many other traditional cultures that are reaching out to our nations, and there's so much to learn. I'm just open to all the traditional games in New Zealand and Mohawk territory, and whether it's across the pond in Europe. One of my biggest regrets is not taking that opportunity to play for Team Canada after my 20-year-old year, but I would have that's why I just adore hearing all your guys' stories about Team Canada. I just fascinated with it.
Well, Brent, I wouldn't refer to you as an elder, but the rest of us, I guess in our society, we would be the elders. And I think you and I have talked about it. The role of an elder in terms of meaningful communication and delivering the kind of message we're trying to deliver. You got any ideas? Because it's not easy for elders to really be respected to the point of almost brushing off some of the messaging that they have delivered forever.
Yeah, well, I was taught by our old people that they have a role, and that role is to nurture, educate, and be there for support. And I just encourage you guys to keep doing the same thing, to educate, support. And the elders that had the most impact in my community, was through strength, resilience, and kindness and respect. And I think that's what people of all colors respect that. I've had elders that are yelling, kicking, and screaming, and it goes back to the horse culture. People are going to fight. Flight means they run, freeze, they're going to freeze, or they're going to fawn. People don't really, they'll respond to it, but they won't respond to it very well. Those 4 kindness attributes, I just encourage you to keep going in a good way, and I really appreciate what you guys are doing for everybody. So thank you. See you, Gus.
Brent, I don't know how much time you got, but I have to ask you this. You had mentioned the horse. You have a business that relates to experiencing the working with horses and the ability to transmit energy and feel emotions, and how horses in your culture, you've always been aware of their sensitivity to the surroundings around them, particularly the humans that they're interacting with. And I think it all ties in. So I wouldn't mind you talking about your business out there and what you're doing. And I know you've had Jordan's hockey team out, and you've had, I believe, his school staff out to experience that kind of work.
Yeah.
Tremendous team building opportunity, but an appreciation of the impact of your feelings and affecting those in your area. And I don't care if it's on the bench coaching a hockey team or sitting beside a teammate, but relating it to your work with horses, I'd just like to turn that over to you to elaborate on it.
So thank you, Wally, for sharing that. But we try not to call it a business. We call it an impact initiative, because if you make impacts and initiatives, then just kind of punch words in our culture. If you call it a business, people think you're out to make money. We're not. We're out to make impact, make initiatives that will carry lessons. So that's what we call it. But we use our ranch, and we use our ranch as a team building work site. But we use our ranch to gather people and teach them about our culture, our heritage, and our traditions. But we use the spirit of the horse, and the horses that we have are the teachers. So we have the horses that teach communication, and the horses will teach us communication. And we have team building workshops for sports teams, managers, athletes, but also workshops. And we teach them about the horse culture, but we also teach them about the tendencies of a horse. And I talked about the four tendencies of the horse: blind spots, communication. And the horse will literally teach you lessons and inspire you to use your communication of voice. Because coaching, educating, and teaching is all about body language. 90% of what comes out of your mouth, a horse or a human being are going to remember your body language. So that's the big thing, is how you present your drills, how you present pressure. I don't like to call it applying pressure. We actually call it encouragement. If you show encouragement and you learn how to back off, then your teachers, your coaches, your staff are going to grow. But if you constantly apply pressure or too much pressure, what's going to happen is the teachers, the players, or coaches are going to go into those 4 stages: fight, flight, fright, or freeze, or fawn. So the horses are literally teaching us on how to use our skills. And that's what we do. And we also use traditional practices. At the end of the day, we have 12 different modules. We went to school at Cartier Farms. but we've morphed it into our own traditional Tsuut'ina Cree, my wife's Cree, so our own cultures. And we have debriefing sessions. And at the end of the day, we use a teepee, and we use a circle, and we also use methods of a grandfather rock, or we use an eagle feather, where we talk about our lessons and we talk about what's bothering us in life, or what's positive. It doesn't matter. And everybody has a valued input or a lesson. Some people cry, some people break down, some people are going through a rough time, some people are joking. But what it does is create that unity where everybody has a voice, everybody has input, and then at the end of the day, we go around and we all handshake or hug each other, and that's building that team unit. So that's what we do at the ranch, and we've had, a couple thousand, 2,000 to 3,000 people come through the ranch, and we only operate seasonal from April to October, and it's about impact initiatives, how we're going to make change. We don't call it a business because we literally don't make money. We just make enough to survive, and we're about making positive change at the ranch.
Thanks very much, Brent. I really appreciate that. Rick, do you have any questions? Tom, did you want to ask Brent? He's had a pretty amazing hockey career, been there and done that, come full circle, and it's great to see him coming around making such a difference in the area that he's working in, and it really the good of the game. Any questions, Rick?
No questions, Wally. I'm just an interested learner here. I'm absorbing right now.
Well, Wally, I have a meeting that I have to attend to today, but I just wanted to stop in, say a quick hi to everybody, and I will wish you guys a good day. And I missed you guys at Father Bauer. I wanted to go to the game, but I was watching my niece play on the other side. I heard that was a barn burner, and hopefully we'll catch up at the rink soon and have a coffee. But you guys take care. I'm going to log out.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, Brent. Really appreciate it.
Well, Tom, it's nice to get it right from the horse's mouth, so to speak. The ceremony and the background of what he, was responsible for coming to fruition. It's really, really good to have Brent on.
I'd like to know how to get a team out there. It would have to be right away, I guess, if they only just go to October. So,
Yeah, I'm still on. So how to get a what?
well, like next year I'm going to be coaching. They're going to have a elite girls under 15 team.
Oh yeah, okay.
I'm going to coach it, and I'd really like to find a way to get out there and do that. I think it just sounds like terrific life lessons.
Well,
Go
Tom,
to the website, dhranch44.com.
Okay, DH
And
Ranch.
Yeah, DH Ranch. Google it. It's on the search engine. And then contact us and we'll set it up.
and then one of the things, Tom, I'm going to recommend is you are one team competing against two other teams. And I believe that part of that isolation of your team versus another team, the teams need that cohesion in terms of the philosophy of what you're doing. And boy, I would recommend all teams come out there. I don't know what numbers you can handle, but I would have the 3U13 teams and their staffs come out and experience it and go away from that experience, taking away whatever they can. Is that feasible, Brent?
Well, I think we plan our year right now as far as clientele, because the DH Ranch, we do corporate, not only corporate, but we do Indigenous 101 diversity sessions. And we also do healing sessions for men, finding their spirit, and the women's our ladies session. So, and we also work with elders. So I think the best thing to do is reach out to us. I've had many ex-NHL friends that are coaching WHL reach out. And the thing is, trying something different. There's so many team building options out there. You hear of high level NHL teams, WHL teams doing different things, and the thing about us is we're on the land, we're with horses, we're with safe horses. We're on the land. That's something different. So when we're connected to the land, there's a different beauty and element to team building. It's not in an office, or it's not in a building. So it's all, you know, one day a team came out here and it was raining, and they were suggesting to cancel it, and I said, no, just bring gumboots, because you're going to have to learn how to deal with adversity, and you're going to have to learn how to deal with teamwork, and how you get through this little bit of rain will make you better. And man, they came out of this session. So they were working as a team, working together. There was players that didn't talk to each other. There was players that did not even say hi to each other at the beginning, but at the end, they were connected. They knew a little more about each other at the end of the day.
Okay, Brent, it's just about getting time to sign off here. So, Tom, I'll see you at your Friday practice. It's close by, Henry Viney. And Rick, thanks for getting on, and as usual, sharing your wisdom from real experience. And hopefully I can get this edited and get it out in messages in a positive way that makes a difference. So thanks very much, everybody.
Have a good day, fellas.
Okay, take care. God bless y'all.
Sure.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.